Welcome to the 2019 Nightmare Matchups for every UFC champion. Now, a Nightmare matchup for a champion is the most dangerous opponent in the weight class for that specific champion. Stylistically, with the attributes, which fighter gives a champion the hardest time or is favored to beat them. Now, the scaling for the Nightmare matchup is ranked from 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely no problem for the champion, almost no chance for that quote-unquote Nightmare matchup, to a number 10, which is the opposite. The champion is most likely to lose that fight. So, we're going to start with the Strawweight division. The champion, Rose Namajunas, was a champion in 2018 as well. She has an amazing long-range Taekwondo boxing hybrid striking style with insanely dangerous submission skills and great positioning when it comes to the ground game. The skills that cross that up are a little bit lacking, but because of that, the Nightmare matchup for Rose Namajunas does not change from 2018. It is Jessica Andrade. Now, the reasons are still the same. Rose didn't really show to cover the holes that she had in the beginning of 2018. Her infighting and opponents able to smother her and land volume on the inside is a big weakness from Rose Namajunas. She kind of freezes in that space. And the best fighter in that space is Jessica Andrade, who thrives under those conditions. Her power is immense, physically probably the strongest fighter in the entire division. Her takedowns rely on strength and trump technique most of the time, able to take down fighters like Claudia Gadelha, who is one of the best takedown artists in the entire division, and with her means of hooks on the inside, land a huge amount of volume, combined with a threat of the single leg to a high crotch, to eventually slamming the opponent, and developed great submission defense on the ground. Jessica Andrade is molded to be a huge problem for Rose Namajunas. Now, the biggest thing why I don't favor Andrade to actually beat Namajunas is because of her inability to get in range effectively. She kind of marches down, doesn't cut off the ring, and that's a huge problem to get in on Rose. But that is the only problem for Andrade. But because of Rose's long range style, she attacks long and retracts long distances. And something Jessica Andrade likes to do to opponents is very similar to Daniel Cormier, and that is to slip on the outside and come in with the left hook. It's not really meant to hurt the opponent, but it's meant to cover the distance so she can work her way on the inside and pressure the opponent back. So attacking with a long 1-2, potentially ending with the left hook, and then trying to retract all that distance back is going to allow Jessica Andrade, if she's able to evade those punches, she can start tracking down Namajunas throughout the entire fight until she gets it to the cage. And that is where it's going to be problematic. So the level of danger Andrade brings to Rose Namajunas is a 6.5 out of 10. And we look at the runner-ups. Tatiana Suarez has the ability to get in on Rose the most effectively, and her wrestling is something to be very threatened by, but her means of finishing and fighting on the ground with Rose is going to be a problem, and her striking is nowhere near Rose's level. Karolina Kowalkiewicz has beaten Rose before, has the volume, has the ability to get in range, and has that infighting strength, but her grappling is lacking, her submission defense is lacking. Claudia has very similar opportunities to fight Rose like Andrade does, but she has a huge gas tank problem. And then we go to the Flyweight champion, and frankly, I do believe the only champion with really no nightmare matchup at all. After going through the list, after analyzing all the fighters, I don't see any fighter coming close to beating the champion, Valentina Shevchenko. But just to fill in the gap, who is the most dangerous or most capable of giving Valentina Shevchenko a competitive fight? That fighter is going to be Joanne Calderwood. Now, the reason why Joanne Calderwood would be the most competitive fight for Valentina Shevchenko is they have a very similar style. They have a very similar skill set. Joanne Calderwood may be a little bit taller, longer. She has great teeps. She has great kicks from a distance that can keep Shevchenko honest. And her grappling has greatly improved to be somewhat of a threat, even if Shevchenko wants to take it to the ground. I would see this fight as somewhat a lesser version of Shevchenko fighting Shevchenko, and that is going to give Shevchenko the most competitive fight. So the level of danger I give Joanne Calderwood to Valentina Shevchenko, I would say, is a 4 out of 10. When you look at the runner-ups, such as Roxanne Modafferi has a lot of experience and better grappling than Shevchenko. Her striking isn't on the same level, but she does have a path to go to in the fight. Macy Barber is 20 years old, up and coming, has a lot of skills to progress on, and her baseline skills that she has right now are a bit of a threat. She's a big fighter for this division, ruthless, relentless, has some of the most vicious ground and pound you'll see in women's MMA, and her footwork is the biggest threat to Valentina Shevchenko. And we look at Andrea Lee, the size and the strength with the oncoming pressure is the biggest thing that's going to give Shevchenko any problems. And then we go to the Bantamweight champion and the Featherweight champion, but we're just going to cover the Bantamweights. And we can kind of all guess who the number matchups would be for the featherweight division. Amanda Nunes, the champion. Now Nunes, with her great boxing, long range attacks, great trips in the clinch, and a methodical, underrated positioning on the ground, Nunes is going to be a very hard fighter to beat in this division. But her nightmare matchup is Ketlen Vieira. Now this has a very similar reason to Valentina Shevchenko's nightmare matchup. Vieira has also a very similar style to Amanda Nunes, although it isn't as fluid, but it's a lot more based on strength and eventually smothering the opponent. But unlike Valentina Shevchenko's nightmare matchup, Vieira does have a big weapon, which indicates that she can be a big danger to Amanda Nunes, and that is her endurance combined with her pressure. Able to take advantage of Amanda Nunes' biggest and pretty much her only weakness, and that is her gas tank and her effort to pace herself. The pressure can destroy her pacing, and the great gas tank of Vieira can overcome Amanda Nunes entirely. She has power in her hands, she throws big punches, sometimes a little bit too winging punches for the straight shots of Nunes, but the ability to smother, get into the clinch, very strong in that position, great trips as well, and having a very patient and smothering ground game, it is a formula that can give Nunes some problems, especially if the fight can get past the first 2 rounds. So the level of danger I give Ketlen Vieira to Amanda Nunes will be a 5.5 out of 10. And we look at the runner-ups, such as Aspen Ladd. Aspen Ladd has a dangerous, also very smothering grappling game with insane ground and pound. If she's able to ever get on top of Nunes, it's going to be a huge problem. But just everything else is a bit hard to compete with Nunes. Holly Holm has a good elusive striking game with good boxing experience to eventually try to outpace her. The only problem is Holly Holm, when she gets pressure heavily, she tends to clinch up right away, and that is where Nunes is going to dominate. Then we go to the flyweight division, and the champion, Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo is looking to be a very dominant champion as long as this division lasts, and the nightmare matchup for him is tough to call, but Deiveson Figueiredo seems to be the most threatening fighter in this entire division, with a menacing striking game relying on insane distance management, correlating to his composure in the fight. I mean, he looks like he's never in danger. He always evades strikes by mere centimeters, sometimes countering the opponent. His presence in the cage itself, it seems to shake opponents a bit, and his switching stance style can give some of the takedowns of Henry Cejudo problems, and the karate approach of Cejudo is going to meet its match against Figueiredo, especially because of that distance management. So the level of danger I give Figueiredo to Henry Cejudo is actually going to be a 7 out of 10. And when we look at the runner-ups, Joseph Benavidez has beaten Cejudo before, and his unorthodox blitzing style with a great wrestling game gives Cejudo some problems. And then we go to the Bantamweight division, where the champion TJ Dillashaw has lost in his last fight. So that is the reason why I'm going to include Henry Cejudo this time. But you'll be surprised, I do not think he's a nightmare matchup. I think there's a much more formidable foe for TJ Dillashaw in this division, and that is going to be Marlon Moraes. Now, the switching of stances of TJ, the unorthodox style that he has, doesn't really reign supreme when you're fighting someone with impeccable timing and sniper-like precision, combined with huge power, and that is exactly what Marlon Moraes brings to his fights. The timing on his head kicks are absolutely insane against even the fastest fighters in this division. His wrestling game will be enough to rival TJ Dillashaw's, especially defensively, which is all he needs in the fight. Submissions are on point. And unlike Cody Garbrandt, Marlon Moraes does not make fundamental mistakes whenever they start exchanging in the pocket, which is something TJ likes to do sometimes. And TJ Dillashaw, when he gets caught, when he gets connected on, it's usually because he zigged when he should have zagged. And because of his constant footwork, constant movements all around the place, it can happen a little bit more frequently. But opponents are not fast enough to catch him, or don't have the timing to catch him. Moraes is going to act almost like a brick wall defensively, and on the offense he acts more of a sniper, and that is a very hard opponent for TJ to come across. So the level of danger I give Marlon Moraes to TJ Dillashaw is an 8.5 out of 10. And we look at the runner-ups such as Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo does still bring a great wrestling game to keep TJ on edge, and the sniper-like qualities that he has with that right hand and his karate base still gives TJ a lot of problems whenever he makes a mistake, and that is what costed him in the first fight, a big mistake. Dominic Cruz has beaten TJ before, showing that his elusiveness is enough to actually make TJ miss. His awkward footwork, his constant switching, his offbeat takedown attempts, his overall elusiveness, combined with his size and reach advantage, frustrates what TJ is trying to do out there. And Sean O'Malley with the long range, unorthodox striking, speed enough to even surpass TJ's. Also, a very different pattern to his footwork gives TJ a lot of problems as well. And then we go to the featherweight division and a very dominant champion in Max Holloway. Now, Max Holloway has a lot of opponents coming up, a lot of theoretically tough matchups on his way, and the nightmare matchup for him is a tough one to call. But I'm going to keep it the same as last year, and the nightmare matchup will be Zabit Magomedov. Now, I was going back and forth with Volkanovski, but Zabit is able to compete with Max Holloway in every single area. The biggest issue he has that we know now is his cardio, and that is where the level of danger for him falls. But with Max Holloway's high volume, great striking overall, great takedown defense, it's going to be a problem for Zabit, of course. But Zabit being longer, taller, faster, better kicking technique, perfect punching form, an insane left hook, and a potential pot-shotting style to keep Max Holloway's momentum disrupted at all times, combined with a long reach to catch him like a sniper as well, he gives Holloway issues that nobody else in this division is able to give him. The only other opponent that was able to give him anywhere near these kind of problems was Conor McGregor a while ago, forcing Holloway to keep resetting, and when you force him to keep resetting, his combinations aren't able to get off, and he has to continuously try to find new angles. He's able to really do some damage and put a blockade in front of Max Holloway for those first 2 or 3 rounds. Combined with his superior wrestling, superior grappling, it will be a very tough fight for Max Holloway. But the level of danger I give Zabit now to Max Holloway is a 7 out of 10. The biggest fall in this level of danger from last time is because now we know the cardio issue, and Max Holloway is a cardio machine. And then we look at the runner-ups. In Volkanovski's case, he has all the weapons, all the abilities to give a tough and dangerous time with the power that he has, with that insanely strong wrestling style, and very pressuring. And then we look at Frankie Edgar. Edgar has a great wrestling style to keep on Holloway, great cardio, high volume, good boxing, should be able to keep a competitive fight with Holloway. And then Mirsad Bektic, again, a strong wrestling style, a little bit too aggressive with the striking sometimes, but great ability to cut off the ring. And then we go to the lightweight division and the champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib has a lot of opponents in his way, a lot of tough matchups in his way, but the nightmare matchup is obvious. It's going to be Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson actually is probably the nightmare matchup for everybody in this division, but against Khabib's wrestling style, against his aggressive riding, pressuring style, Tony Ferguson thrives under those situations. His striking is superior to Khabib. He's got a massive reach advantage. He can put a lot of volume on Khabib on the feet, not allow Khabib to walk him down or anything, and because of that, he will be able to see the shots coming from far away. And combined with his high-level wrestling, his submission game is one of the most dangerous in this entire division. He is one of the few fighters in this division where if you get in his guard, you are probably in a worse position than you are on the feet. But the biggest thing that gives Tony Ferguson the nightmare matchup over everybody else is his ability to keep up the pace with Khabib, if not surpass it, which is absolutely insane. So the level of danger I give Tony Ferguson to Khabib is a solid 7.5 out of 10. Then we look at the runner-ups. Mairbek Taisumov has the power and the timing and the position on the feet to knock out anybody at any given moment. No matter where you are, no matter what position he takes, he is always ready to counter, always ready to deliver that punishing blow. But when it comes to the wrestling, Taisumov is extremely strong there as well. Great takedown defense and great at reversing positions on the ground. He is going to be one of the few fighters that are going to be able to match Khabib with his strength. Gregor Gillespie, one of the best wrestlers in this entire division, the only fighter I can see rivaling Khabib with wrestling, and his boxing technique should be able to give Khabib problems on the feet as well because he's not worried about the shot as much as other fighters are. And then El Iaquinta, a very similar style, but more so with the boxing and not with the wrestling compared to Gregor Gillespie. But because of that, he has to worry about the wrestling a lot more. But his hands are able to threaten Khabib. And then we go to the welterweight division, a thriving division these days. So Kamaru Usman, now the champion, has a lot of danger coming his way as being the new champion of this division. The nightmare matchup for that constant wrestling, high pace, volume style is Santiago Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio has a very strong punishing game, great takedown defense, good BJJ as well if it gets to the ground, great escapes on the ground as well, and his technical striking combined with that power and combined with that insane jab to keep opponents honest at all times and allow himself to see the opponent's reactions afterward, such as takedowns to get past that jab, gives Kamaru Usman such a big problem. The leg kicks that Usman doesn't really check. Not going to be able to pressure Ponzinibbio that well. The jabs are going to be able to allow Ponzinibbio to anticipate a lot more. And that punishing dynamite of a right hand that he has, at any given moment, Kamaru Usman can pay for it. If he throws anything laboring, anything offbeat, that'll be enough for Ponzinibbio to end the fight instantly. So the level of danger I give Santiago Ponzinibbio is a 7.5 out of 10. And when we look at the runner-ups, Alexander Kunchenko has an insane defensive wrestling game and a much better striking game, very methodical and very technical on the feet with everything he throws and some great power. And the big problem for Usman to fight him is the patient striking with pressuring movement and feints. Colby Covington able to wrestle with Kamaru Usman potentially. A striking game that can outpace Usman with high volume. An ability to just scramble with Usman on the ground is enough to keep it a very competitive fight. And then Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler, again, one of the biggest punishers to wrestlers in the UFC, period. We've seen that in every single fight he fought a wrestler that tried to take him down. And that is Kamaru Usman's biggest means of actually overcoming Robbie Lawler. And then we go to the middleweight division. Again, the champion, same as 2018, Robert Whittaker. And the nightmare matchup for him might be the toughest one out of all the champions to dictate, but I do believe it is Yoel Romero. Romero has that style to make Whittaker feel like he runs into a wall whenever he blitzes in, and nobody else really gives him that threat. Romero's able to go for takedowns, counter punch, switch stances on him, and deliver huge powering shots, as well as being insanely tough with a granite-like chin, able to walk into a flush head kick from this champion, Robert Whittaker, and seem completely unfazed by it. As well as him fighting that style of Whittaker, that long-range, opportunistic style of blitzing in whenever Whittaker sees an opening, it naturally gives Romero the benefit of pacing himself until Whittaker decides to come in on him, or until Romero decides to enter on Whittaker. So it's a very good stylistic matchup specifically for Romero to pace himself and not gas out. So the level of danger I give Yoel Romero to Robert Whittaker is 7 out of 10. I think it's still a very even fight between them. And we look at the runner-ups. In Israel Adesanya, Adesanya has a great long-range striking game that can be kind of a kryptonite to the long-range blitzing style of Whittaker, but Whittaker has great head movement and a great ability to enter on opponents, and that seems to be where Adesanya falls a little bit, even against Anderson Silva, of all people. When you get past those long-range strikes of Adesanya, he seems to be a lot more open, and I think the infighting of Whittaker will be able to do in Israel Adesanya. And then Kelvin Gastelum, good inside fighting as well. He's going to be able to wait for Whittaker to run in on him and potentially try to look for the counter shots. His hands on the inside seem to be a lot more effective than Whittaker's. But Whittaker is going to be able to keep it at a long range and just pick at Gastelum, which he's not going to be able to do on anybody else in this division. And then Paulo Costa, very similar to Yoel Romero. Whenever Whittaker rushes in on him, Costa can make him feel like he runs into a wall with dynamite on it. The pressure with the fast hands and the countering shots with those hooks on the inside should be able to give Whittaker some problems. And then we go to the light heavyweight division. The champion, Jon Jones, once again. And Jon Jones seems to be super dominant. There seems to be nobody that's going to be able to compete with him because of his overall technical skills. But there are a couple rays of hope to give Jon Jones somewhat of a competitive fight. And the nightmare matchup is Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker has a size, being taller than Jones, about the same reach, and that is something we don't normally see Jon Jones have to compete up against. The power to end the shot with any strike, the athletic ability to adapt in the fight, the speed that he has, and the insane timing he has, even with something like flying knees of all weapons in this division, is going to give Jones a lot of things to think about preparing for the fight. The unpredictable nature of Walker naturally gives Jon Jones a hard time because what we know about Jones is he likes to study for opponents and he doesn't like to take fights on short notice because of that. That is potentially one reason why he didn't compete that well against OSP, but against Johnny Walker, his instincts seem to be completely out of the norm. Such an unorthodox, unpredictable style with great elbows in the clinch. I would say he has better hands than Jones. The back fists come out of nowhere. He's one of the only fighters I think that can compete with the kicks of Jon Jones, with his hook kicks, body kicks, oblique kicks, side kicks, he throws them all. And because of his reach, he's the only one that can catch Jones unexpected whenever Jones strikes at him. Because of this, Jones' offense has to be much more safely measured. And that is a huge weapon for someone like Johnny Walker. The only thing we don't know about Johnny Walker that well is his takedown defense. We have seen it in the past, but those guys aren't John Jones. But there's nobody else in this division that could fight Johnny Walker for us to gauge his takedown defense. But the level of danger I give Johnny Walker to John Jones right now is a 6 out of 10. And we look at the runner-ups such as Dominic Reyes, an overall great skill set, much better hands than Jones, very tall as well, long as well, and a pivoting, redirecting game can work in that kind of bout. Then Daniel Cormier, able to work on the inside, walk down Jones, hand fight, wrestling to compete with Jones at all times. And then Alexander Gustafsson, having great boxing, long reach, patient combination game with really good takedown defense, gives Jones some problems as well. And then we finally go to the heavyweight division. The champion was the double champion, Daniel Cormier. Now, if I'm going to be honest, there aren't too many fighters in this division, I believe, that gives Cormier that much trouble. But if I have to pick the opponent that gives Cormier the most problems, I do believe it's going to be Stipe Miocic. Stipe has the wrestling to compete with Cormier, he has the size, he has a much longer reach, much better boxing game, and when you look at the first fight, he was actually getting the better of DC in almost every exchange. And if Stipe could learn from the last fight, he should be able to keep that up for the most part of the fight. And knowing DC's weakness of leaning to his right, he should be able to find uppercuts, throw down jabs, straight right hands to catch DC leaning. There's a lot of opportunity for Stipe in this one, and he has a better skill set than everybody else in this division to be a high level of danger for DC. So the level of danger I give Stipe to DC is a 6.5 out of 10. And we look at the runner-ups such as Francis Ngannou. Ngannou has the striking, the power, and the timing with great footwork and athletic ability to catch DC at any given moment. Just the single legs from DC are probably do Francis Ngannou in. We look at Curtis Blaydes. I believe Blaydes is going to be able to keep a very competitive fight. Maybe not finish DC like Ngannou is capable of, but just be in the fight at all times. Great wrestling that's going to be able to compete with DC's. He's going to be much bigger as well, which is going to play a factor in that. And then Alexei Olenek, because of his unorthodox, unpredictable submission ability, his means of actually trying to get DC to the ground at all times, and some decent power. So those are the nightmare matchups for every single champion coming into 2019, and I'm very curious, I'm very excited to see how the champions are going to compete against their up-and-coming contenders. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. Leave a comment below what you guys think about the nightmare matchups. Who do you guys think are the hardest matchups, most dangerous matchups for every single champion in the UFC right now? And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.